Got it. I guess I'll start by saying I am mindfully nervous. And so it goes. So it goes. As Ryan said, my name is Kim, and I am part of the Open Doors Zen community, and I recognize many of you. So it's lovely to be with those who I recognize, and it's really lovely to be in practice with those of you who I don't know, but I can feel in our circle today. So the open door tradition is to always start a Dharma offering with gratitude. So that's where I'll begin. So if you just want to take a minute to kind of sense everything that supports you and supports your practice, supports our collective practice, and encourages us on the path. I'll offer gratitude to this planet, to our great mother who's always teaching us, always showing us how to come into balance. Gratitude for our ancestors and all they endured. We sit on their shoulders. Gratitude for our teachers, especially Flint, who guides so many of our hands in each of these sanghas. And of course, gratitude for this practice that has been offered down to us through the centuries. It's really like an artful container. Part of what I'll be reflecting on is the power of that practice. So my thoughts are that I'll talk a little bit about how I see mindfulness. And I know you all did a lot of readings. Ryan shared your curriculum, and I did a little bit of that, but I actually just spent some time just with my own mind and my own thoughts of what this practice of right mindfulness is. Then I'll share an experience of it, and a little bit about the inheritance of what's realized through this practice, and then I'll end with a poem. And if I get really too wordy or long, maybe I'll cut it short, or Ryan, you can like start going something like that. So so when I finally put pen to paper, what I wrote for what mindfulness was to me is that I see mindfulness as a wakefulness, a presencing, a calm, non-reactive state of awareness. When we are mindful, all the stories, all the analyzing, all the efforting, and I know you just talked about effort, but all that efforting drops away. I don't know how many of you have had the joy of practicing with Don Coleman. Our sweet Bonnie there was head student with Don a while back. And when Don teaches, he almost always says these words. He says, relax, relax, relax. The most important thing is to relax. And when I think of mindfulness in that state, that's the energy I feel. He'll say it's like butter melting down. It's soft and non-reactive, aware, awake. And mindfulness is the gateway to all the aspects of the path. It's an essential skill, and it is a skill. It is something to be practiced and learned. I did not do this class with you, but I can imagine that all the 6 elements you've studied so far in this Eightfold path have had teachings highlighting the need for mindfulness, because mindfulness is required for right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and right effort. Mindfulness is an essential aspect of living an awake life, a life guided by our vow. So those were my initial thoughts about mindfulness. But the next thought I immediately had was like, we have a mind. It's actually kind of like mind-blowing when you start thinking about It's an important thing to remember. It's remarkable. We have a life and it's processed through this amazing thing, this mind. Our minds can do really amazing things, things that cause suffering, things that alleviate suffering. All of our senses pass through this gateway: what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we feel, all of our discernment, all of our emotions, confusion, joy, tenderness, sorrow, grief, love. All of our experiences are processed through the gateway of our mind. In Buddhist teachings, they talk about the five skandhas: form, sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness. These are the formations of this mind. It contains everything, everything. And it's really a wow. Like I kind of like what I envisioned was just like, I just wanted to like hold my mind, like, holy cow, it's doing so much, so much. It made me think of a Thich Nhat Hanh poem. I won't say the whole thing because it's out of context, but part of what he says is, I hold my face in my two hands to keep the loneliness warm. Two hands protecting, two hands nourishing. It's like, oh, and that seems just about right, because, oh, these minds can create all kinds of complexity and at times pain. The good news, and the news of this class, is that there is a path, there is a practice, and those same minds can be trained to settle, to clarify, to soften, and to be present to what is. We breathe it all in and we let go of our reactivity. So, with that in mind, I am going to tell you a story. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the Joseph Goldstein talk that was linked in this section of your curriculum, but it's a good one, and I really enjoyed it. And one of the things he does is he uses the word ridiculous. And I will just say this story falls under the classification of ridiculous. And I can tell it because it's mine. It's my mind and it's my ridiculousness. So last winter, I did my first sesshin that was a week long. So a full 7-day immersion, full silence. It was at Hokyoji Monastery up in Minnesota by you all, or somewhere probably between us. I'm guessing you guys are mostly up in the Twin Cities. It was a powerful experience, and there were many Dharma gates. But the very first Dharma gate was how I entered the sesshin, and it was in a lie. We all sat down for dinner and had an orientation. And at the end of the dinner, everybody was settled in, we were chatting, we were kind of oriented to the space, oriented to kind of the general flow and plan. And right at the end, the Eno said, I just want to make sure everybody remembered to do their COVID test before coming today, just before we enter noble silence. And I had forgotten, but I didn't say anything. There was just this pause. And then they said, okay, so we'll enter noble silence now. And it was like, oh, shit. We went into the zendo, and there I was, like facing a wall. And all I could think was, liar. I mean, it was just like so intense. I can't even tell you the amount of shame. I'm a public health nurse. I was part of the COVID response. I care deeply about people not getting ill. I cared deeply about the well-being of my retreat mates. And there I was, just like caught. Just saw myself in so many ways. It was like as messy as it can be. I was at one point kind of crying, laughing, thinking, I'm like a puddle. They're going to have to mop me out of the Zendo, like wring out the thing, like, ugh, there she goes. Like, what happened? But it turned out that I could see in those moments all the ways I turn away from the truth in my life. Usually not so overtly, I'm happy to say, but the many subtle ways that I manipulate the truth or try to coerce life to go my way. And there I couldn't turn away. So I faced the wall and all the parts came forward. It was like entering a furnace. I wasn't thinking as much as I was feeling. First, my shame, but then the intensity of fear and longing, my desire to belong. Oh, my need to be good. So strong, so strong. My desire to be loved and falling so short of who I want to be. I don't know if you ever listened to Natalie Goldberg's Dharma talks, but she calls herself darling. And it's the most wonderful thing. She'll go, oh, darling. And I think I might have done this for myself in that moment or moments. It was long. I want to tell you, I was in the furnace a long time. I did not come into my mindful awareness, I think, until really the next morning. But the interesting thing about fire, about practice, is it does transform things. At some point, the next morning, I found my spine. I found my uprightness. The Zendo was dark. That's why I think it was the next morning, because we got up very early and it was just candlelight. And I was exhausted. I didn't sleep well, you can imagine. And I opened my eyes, and dancing in front of me was my reflection, my shadow. It was dancing in the candlelight of the Zendo. And what I saw was the reflection of Buddha. In the container of practice, it had all burned away. And I was simply left with the moment, no judgment. There I was, this limited being who had done this thing. These practices are remarkably designed to support our awakening, to support the unique and beautiful mind, to turn the wheel and to step through the Dharma gates of your life. The noble silence, the facing the wall, it gave me no escape from the pure experience of it. It might be the longest I have sat really just intensely in the fire. There was no place to disperse the energy, no one to fix it, no one to regulate against, like you're told to lower your eyes. There's reasons, there's just reasons. And it's to hold that container, to stay in, to not be distracted. It was a really beautiful experience ultimately. And that all happened in my little mind. The entire thing. It's like one teeny tiny event in these 48 years. And certainly I have had many bigger fires to burn through, but it was a Dharma gate. And I think that's what this step on the path is about. We practice right mindfulness to step through the Dharma gates, and we place ourselves in the fullness and the mystery and the flow of this life. And in that soft, open, tender place, our hearts and our minds open, and we can see Buddha in ourselves and Buddha everywhere. In that Zendo, In mindfulness, I found my body, I found my breath, I released the story, the judgment and scrutiny, and then I sat upright. This is me. This is us. This is it. This is what happened. What is called for. This practice really, fundamentally, is in the service of wisdom, of compassion. So it makes sense that it's tenderizing and maybe ridiculous. I don't know. When I was studying and kind of thinking about this talk in preparation, another thing that came to me, or really just kept coming to me, and I kept writing it down, and I didn't quite know why, but it was the Heart Sutra. And I think the energy of the Heart Sutra, that sense of dropping away the body, of dropping away all the extra. In the Heart Sutra, the lines, like what I kept hearing is the no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch. It's like just all falls away when we're in that state. But the thing that caught me is actually the line that comes after that. And the line that comes after all of the falling away is, with nothing to attain, a bodhisattva relies on prajna paramita. We rely on wisdom. As we practice the emptying of the small self, what remains is our inherent wisdom, our Buddha nature, our clarity. This is your nature. We are the Buddhas of old. The Buddhas of old are we. There's a quote, and I'm probably not gonna remember it exactly right. It's Suzuki Roshi, it's famous, but Flint uses it pretty often. It's something like, we sit off balance against a background of perfect balance. Something like that. And in that Zendo, I was pretty off balance, a little tilty. Actually, I love the word right for right mindfulness or right effort or right, because it's like righting the ship, it's like finding that uprightness. And we know when we're off balance, but we also know that there is this background of harmony, this background of perfect balance, and there's nothing that separates you from it. Not really. Mindfulness offers the realization that we are the Buddha. Maybe a month ago or so, Open Door hosted our fire burning ceremony. And that's where we take the names from the altars at our retreats and we burn them ceremonially in a fire. So we'll speak each name and we'll ring a bell and burn them. And we do this out at MJ's farm. And yeah, it's its own furnace experience, I'll just say. It's a powerful ceremony. And the space is a powerful space. MJ's farm sits in a valley. And the barn that we sit next to is like built in the late 1800s, I think. So it's an old structure and an old farm, an old farmhouse. And you're just sort of tucked in the driftless part of the state. It's just beautiful. And before we started this ceremony, MJ usually hosts us and he offers a Dharma offering to begin. And he started by inviting the ancestors. by inviting them in, and inviting the ancestors of this place. And he told the most tender story of sitting in mindfulness in that valley, in this space, at the base of this hill where there are these two pathways that go up. And he said that when he sits in the morning, he can hear the horses from 100 years ago, their harnesses, as they walk up those hills to go plow the fields. That is the power of our mind and the power of our practice. Don't doubt it. Don't doubt what your mind can sense and know. Mindfulness brings us into awareness of our natural state, of being part of this vast, contingent, timeless flow. The end of the Heart Sutra, the very final line, it's gate, gate, para, gate, parasam, gate, bodhi, svaha. The translation, I know there's many translations for that line, but the one that I love is gone, gone, gone to the other shore, arriving at the other shore, having never left. We practice and we practice and we practice simply to wake up to who we are. So I want to read a poem, and then if there's discussion, I would be happy to stay, or I'm happy to go, whatever makes the most sense for you all. This poem is called The Little Duck. It's by Donald C. Babcock. This was something that was shared with me at the end of my time as head student some years ago, and it's just stayed like right here. And I think it captures better than I did what I was trying to say. So now we are ready to look at something pretty special. It is a duck riding the ocean 100 feet beyond the surf. No, it isn't a gull. A gull always has a raucous touch about him. This is some sort of duck, and he cuddles in the swells. He isn't cold, and he is thinking things over. There is a big heaving in the Atlantic, and he is part of it. He looks a bit like a mandarin, or the Lord Buddha meditating under the bo tree. But he is hardly enough above the eyes to be a philosopher. He has poise, however, which is what philosophers must have. He can rest while the Atlantic heaves because he rests in the Atlantic. Probably he doesn't know how large the ocean is, and neither do you. But he realizes it. And what does he do, I ask you? He sits down in it. He reposes in the immediate as if it were infinity, which it is. That is religion, and the duck has it. He has made himself a part of the boundless by easing himself into it just where it touches him. So be the duck, my friends. Relax, relax, relax. Freedom is the inheritance of this path, and your unique mind is the portal into this boundless ocean. So please don't doubt that.